Hello and welcome back inside the Part from May for podcast number 889. Yes, this is Todd.
No, Todd, not now!
AKA Negative Camera. You know why I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we're going to talk about F1 news because there is F1 news all over the place. It's like a scattergun shot F1 news all over us. And before doing that, of course, I have to bring in my co-host. You know who this is, all the way on the right coast of our nation, in our nation's capital, not far from the Washington Monument, where she flies her skills as a master statistician and all-around amazing cat person, as evidenced by the cat tree radio too. Yes, you know her, you love her, the lovely Dorita.
Grace!
Grace, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Todd. Oh, we even have a visitor in the cat tree
Yes, you
this
got
evening.
a visitor.
So we'll see how long Ziggy was napping. I'm sure I've ruined her napping, and we'll see how long this lasts.
Yep, there'll be hell to pay.
Yeah, she may still be napping. Who knows? I don't know. They've been weird today. I feel like it must be like a full moon or something. Cats have been
Could
weird
be.
today. I don't know. Solar flares. I don't know.
Could be. I think they're beside themselves with all the Ocon news.
Yeah, for sure. What? Renault's terrible? What? Yeah, I'm surprised.
And just up front, folks, before I get too far into the podcast, I want to thank all of our Patreon supporters, many of whom are joining us live during this recording. And they're following along during this recording and chatting to us. You know, they're just typing away and commenting and sharing thoughts, opinions, insight, Delphic wisdom, if you will. And you, too, could do that if you're a Patreon supporter. And so thank you to them. And also, before I get into this podcast, it must be said that this could turn out to be the Oconathon, you know? Didn't plan it to be, but Esteban pulled all this out on me, and so we're going to talk about that tonight, amongst other things Formula One related, and that also includes, Grace, Formula One properties.
I just am glad that, I was just thinking, man, we're getting close to 900. We should do something for 900. I'm just glad it's not the Oconathon for 900, because that would be sad. Like,
That would suck.
That's not how I want to spend 900.
That's not how I want to spend 900 either.
I mean, we're not spending it in the Bahamas, but at least we're not spending it talking about Esteban Ocon.
Esteban Ocon. Yeah. No, that ain't going to
So,
work.
yeah, that's great.
Well, that's the big news out of this week, Grace. Before I get into the big news, we're going to talk about first Esteban Ocon horribly abused.
All right, this is terrible. This was like...
It was bad. Yeah,
I
agree with
mean,
you.
again, I don't know. I'm not really big on the social medias. I'm old, right? Kids face it differently now. But I was just like, again, I think there's to me, a very clear demarcation between like, I'm a jokey person. I'm a pokey person. That's how I show love. Sarcasm is my love language. So I totally get the like trash talk of sports or something like that. But you can't threaten people's lives. You can't talk about their families. You can't, like, that's not...
Yeah.
That's not the point. You're just, I don't understand. When I saw his message, and I was like, I don't know. All the things that just came to my mind were curse words, but I'm just saying, I don't understand people. There's no point in that.
No. Silly. He's
just
a
a
race car
guy.
driver.
Yeah.
He made a move. And whether you disagree with his move is a bad move, whatever. But my gosh.
There's no reason to threaten
calm
anybody.
down. Good
And
Lord.
especially because it's not like you're paying for it. You know what I
I
mean?
know.
What skin do you have in this game? None.
I know.
I can be mad about something. That's fine. That's fandom. And you can be like, I'm really mad about that thing. But again, there's a very firm line between, fandom and like harming somebody. Anyway, I just thought it was...
Yeah. I mean, there's a difference between saying stuff about Caitlin Cullick and then just going clubbing her at the key.
Correct.
Right? It's a whole different thing.
That's correct.
Yeah. So for those of you that are sitting at home going, what the heck are they talking about? So,
I missed that.
okay, the Monaco Grand Prix. last week. It wasn't a great experience for Esteban Ocon, and this week he took to social media to offer a statement. An official statement came out, and he said this, quote, "Much has been said in the aftermath of Monaco Grand Prix. While I have received many messages of support, I have been deeply saddened by the amount of abuse and negativity that I have received online regarding my character, my driving, and my career. The misinformed statements and gross distortions that I have seen online in recent days about my ability to work with a team have been inaccurate, hurtful, and damaging. Since my first laps in motorsport, I have approached this sport with humility, professionalism, and respect. These values were instilled in me at a very young age. Of course, I have made honest mistakes. We're not robots. We are athletes pushing ourselves to the limit every day to achieve our dreams of winning races," end quote. Now, all that being said, he's been taking a lot of incoming over his actions into Portier last week at Monaco, and it adds to the notion that, you know, he can be a scrappy driver, you know, kind of like Magnussen can be a scrappy driver, right? And you know, sometimes he tends to bang wheels, and he's an aggressive driver, and that's just kind of how he's wired. So he's taking a PR and or brand beating at the moment, and that's not, you know, it's not the best of time to him to take a lot of brand damage anyway. So I thought, you know, gosh, this caught me off guard because I haven't been following any of it. And I started to look at the social media and comments about him. And I mean, they were just heinous, very crass comments, just ridiculous. As I often call this, it's the bravery of being out of range, right? And that's convenient, but it's totally uncalled for. And I got to thinking, Grace, as mad as Pierre Gasly was about the whole situation, he didn't say this kind of crap,
No.
and he wouldn't be advocating that fans say this to Esteban. You know, it's not, you know, so if the guy aggrieved, you know,
Right.
isn't that furious and, you know, threatening, you know, somebody with their life and all this stuff, I'm certain Pierre would think that this is way over the line too, and it's truly sad.
I mean, and again, it's not like I'm not a huge Esteban Ocon fan. I'm certainly not a big Alpine fan. But again, there's a difference between, I don't know. I mean, we do a pod. We spend a lot of time talking about, was that a racing incident or not? That's fine, right? There's some conversation about, right, like you're saying, like Kevin Magnussen, is that over a line? He's scrappy, you know, whatever word you want to use, right? Like, is that over a line? That's very different than, you suck, you're terrible, you shouldn't have a, you know, like, and again, these are like the, like, I don't know, pod safe things I can say about what I saw.
Yeah.
I was just like, I can't, I don't have that kind of vitriol. I hope not towards anybody, but certainly somebody I don't know and I've never met. I mean, I don't know. I thought it was just, and to have to make a statement like that and feel the need to have to come out and say, like, I don't know. It was just, and it was like, I saw it on Instagram. It's like 3 scrolls. Like that's a lot of words for Instagram. It was enough that you had to do three page scrolls.
I know. It was a big statement. I just read a portion of it, but you know, and the whole social media, well, it's just devolved into the least common denominator of human depravity in my mind, and it's unfortunate because, you know, there's other pockets of social media that are great and funny and entertaining and great acts of kindness can occur there too, but it's unfortunate.
And especially considering Ocon didn't come from money, right?
No,
like, I mean,
no,
he's definitely the opposite of, like, my dad's a race car driver, you know, Stroll family kind of money, right? Like something like that. I mean, his
or Rosberg, something like that.
Yeah, right. Like his family rode around in a van. Like, I don't, you know, there's some
very humble beginnings.
Yeah, that I'm like, I don't have that kind of gumption for anything. So, I mean, again,
they sacrificed a lot to get Esteban where he's at, and it's just, you know, and like you said, you know, it's not that I celebrate that guy's entire career, you know, but I do like Esteban. I think he's you know, very much self-made, right, in his skills and everything that he's done and the sacrifice that he and his family have made to get to that point. So it's very sad to see that happen. And then right after that, on the heels of that, he coming out and making that announcement, then a couple days later, then the big announcement comes out in a joint statement that Esteban is out at the end of this year at Alpine, Esteban released a joint statement with Alpine saying, quote, "It's been a significant period in my life to be racing at this team in Formula One. While I've been here for 5 years as a full-time racing driver, my professional career started at Enstone back when I was a teenager, so it will always be a special place for me. We've had some great moments together, some tough moments as well, and I'm certainly grateful to everyone at the team for these memorable times. I will announce my plans very soon, but in the meantime, my full focus is on delivering on track for this team and having a successful remainder of the season," end quote. So big news. I appreciate. So I thought, no, that's interesting. Let's just kind of see how social media receives that, right?
Yeah.
After dragging him through the mud, let's just see what they say. Well, it's as you would expect. It's all the right move, it's terrible, and all that kind of stuff. I was kind of intrigued by reading comments from journalists and some press articles that sort of suggested, let me put it this way, the way that they were sort of discussing this topic was interesting in that they kind of suggested that Esteban is leaving because he's, is it a case he's just he hasn't seen enough progress from the team. He's kind of lost confidence in the team. And so he's deciding to leave the team. Now, as much as I understand why that would be the spin from Esteban's position.
Right.
I'm a little surprised we aren't talking more in the media about the comments that Bruno Fama made to the French press in Monaco, where he suggested it was completely unacceptable, a change has got to be made, and he was not happy with Esteban at all. So I certainly have no axe to grind with Esteban, but when you look over the entirety of his F1 career, despite the win with Alpine, there's been quite a few teammate battles and clashes and damage and some errors on balance. And that's kind of a hard truth. And I'm not taking the stuffing out of him. He's an awesome driver. But it is kind of an interesting spin for the media to take on that after Monaco and what the team itself said.
I mean, it's Renault. Why do they never, ever want to admit maybe, I don't know, maybe it's your fault. Maybe, you haven't won a championship since Fernando Alonso and you're a completely different team then. I don't know. Of course the team isn't going to say, yeah, we're terrible. It's just us and Pierre now, right? Like, I get it. They're not going to say that, right. But I don't know. You could have just been like, yes, it was amicable. We're all, what is it? Like some sort of I can't remember the term for when people break up and it's like, they're just having an amicable split and it's fine. And it's Gwyneth Paltrow had some term for that, for her divorce. But anyway, decoupling and something. Anyway, somebody will point it out. I can't remember now what it was.
How
but
utilitarian could that be?
I don't know. We always joke because Toto Wolff in the one video we watched referred to his relationship as being intact. I'm like, that's my level of emotion. We're intact. We're still together. We're good.
My wife and I are intact.
We're good. Yes. We're intact. I don't have a lot of emotion either. But I think that, I guess it's not surprising. It's always kind of interesting to think across a driver's career. And I mean, he was like Toto Wolff's guy when he came in. There's so much promise of Ocon that he was going to be I don't know. It just has never panned out for him the way he was supposed to. Toto was just kind of sitting him over here for a minute until he had a seat at Mercedes, and somehow he's never had a seat at Mercedes for Ocon, who was his guy, and now he's just kind of won his career away at Renault, which is terrible.
I think it's easy with the clarity of hindsight being 2020.
Sure.
And so I can sit here in an armchair and look across the breadth of his career in Formula One and think of all the clashes he had at Force India, those kind of things, right? And it's easy for me to see that, but in aggregate, when you boil it all down, I think there's got to be some introspective time for Esteban to look at that And to your point, he was Esteban's guy. He was a Mercedes guy coming in. It was just biding his time for the seat to open up at Mercedes. And I think some choices he made soured the milk. Some of those clashes, it's not important necessarily, Esteban, of who was right between you and Sergio or not, or who was more at fault and blah, 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 blah. It's more important to bring both cars home in the points if you can. And it doesn't necessarily matter if Sergio is ahead of you or if you're ahead of Sergio. And I know the old canard that, you're only measured by your teammate because he's in the same equipment. And I get all that. But there's also a whole part about not throwing away $200,000 nose cones.
And being a team player.
And being a team player, yeah. And I think on balance, if you look at it, I think Pierre's done a better job of that than what Esteban has over the balance of his career. And not always to Pierre's benefit, but he played the team role and was amenable to that situation that he may personally have not been that happy with. So I would think that, Esteban's got to look at that, and I'm sure he has. I'm sure he's looked at his career in depth and thought, I could have done better there, could have done better here. But I think it's an inflection point in his career to make a change. And whether he's at Haas, Williams, whatever team he's at, to make a change in that trajectory, kind of like Alex Albon has, to really sort of resurrect that concept and keep himself as a critical part of a team, not a driver that has occasional flares of glory, but then also
burns it,
costs you $20 million in car parts.
Burns it all down. But I don't think. I mean, the thing is gosh, Alex Albon is so likable, right? I don't think Esteban, that's really necessarily his personality. That also probably doesn't help him in the I don't watch Formula One management part of who picks who goes where. It doesn't help. I mean, Alex certainly is a different person now than he was when he was at Red Bull, and I think he's very open about what went wrong, what he would do differently if if he's given that opportunity again, how that would work for him. But I just don't think that, it doesn't ever seem to be. Esteban's never been in that light, and I think that, him and Alonso had a love fest, and boy, that soured real quick. He kind of doesn't have the best external looking sort of perception of likability or working well with his teammates, and he's not good enough. People. A lot of times people are like, "Oh, Max, I don't like his personality." And I think some of that is, that's who he is, and that's, kind of the Dutch thing. And he's very funny, but it's a very particular kind of funny, and it's not everybody's cup of tea. But I don't think Esteban really is good enough in a way that Max Verstappen is good enough that he can be a jerk. Or Kimi Räikkönen, right? Kimi Räikkönen wasn't always the most lovable person, but was very talented. So then he could get away with it in a way that we would never tolerate that kind of stuff from somebody else. So, I don't know where he's gonna land. I don't know.
Well, that's the next big question.
Who's gonna? You're right. That is.
So it leaves us options that many suggest that. Okay, so what happens? Where does he go? Right. So a lot of people suggesting Haas is interested. To team with Ollie Behrman, with others saying that Sauber Audi might be interested should Carlos Sainz decline their offer. That's a possibility. To me, Haas might make sense, but I'd be surprised if the Audi option, if Audi would take that route, if I'm honest. They have Hülkenberg. So in my mind, I think Audi may look for a younger development driver or a driver with serious car development skills.
I would take Bottas over. I would take Esteban Ocon.
Yeah. Would you take Joe Guan Yu?
Over Esteban. I guess not. I guess I would take Esteban, but...
Yeah.
I don't know. Joe's just been really. I feel very flat. I have very flat affect for him. I feel like he doesn't really make a mark on the track, and I mean, not to be his fault necessarily, right? He's at stick F1. What is he gonna? He's not gonna look great, but and I was thinking about Haas maybe being. It's a clear delineation. Mm-hmm. You're the veteran number one driver, if you will, and here's the new guy that we're bringing in. And maybe that would settle it, because I don't think that Behrman is going to be the next Oscar Piastri, right? Like, so unless you have that dynamic, because Oscar was really good out of the gate and he's still really good, and that hasn't broken McLaren yet, but it could. So as long as Behrman isn't that kind of talent in a Haas, I think that could work. It would be a little cleaner maybe for everybody.
It might be, I agree. So we'll have to see and then equally on the flip side of that coin, this also brings up, what does Alpine do? Well, do they go for Valtteri? Do they go for Zhou Guan Yu? Do they go for Kevin Magnussen? Do they go for Carlos Sainz? Or do they go for a reserve driver, Jack Doohan? And my money, I think Jack Doohan is who they'll go with, because Jack knows the team incredibly well, and Pierre Gasly is certainly a seasoned veteran there already. So having a young development driver come in and giving Jack a shot would be my hunch. But what do I know?
No, I mean, and I think that's what a lot of people have rumored, right? Is to bring in Jack Doohan, and you're right, and pairing him with Gasly. It's interesting that so we're all kind of waiting for Carlos Sainz to be signed
he's
somewhere,
like the
right?
linchpin, isn't he?
Right. Once we kind of know where he's going to go, I think everything else will kind of fall into place. But it's interesting that after Carlos Sainz, Valtteri Bottas is like the belle of the ball of the back markers. It's sort of like, who wants him? Where does he want to go? Because I think he brings so much expertise, and he's got this vibe personality to him that is like Ricciardo. People love that guy, and he'll continue to bring sponsors in and entertainment in, and doing the unboxed videos and stuff that he does. And he's a solid driver, and he was at Mercedes racing Lewis. And so, I think that it's kind of interesting that no matter, until all the seats are signed, Bottas's name is just going to keep coming up.
I know.
So he's sort of the belle of the ball of the back markers, but we're just waiting for what Carlos Sainz is going to do. That's the real nail that we're waiting on.
I know. So it'll be interesting to see what Alpine does, but I'm not done with Alpine. I'm not done with them
there's
yet.
more.
But wait, there's more. Now how much would you pay?
Oh my goodness.
I know.
It suddenly became a ShamWow commercial for Alpine.
It's German. The Germans always making good things.
Yeah, isn't that why you want it? The Germans make it.
The ShamWow. Didn't that guy get arrested or something?
Did he? I don't know.
Jail or something? I don't know.
Wait, because of the ShamWow, or
I don't think it
unrelated
was
to the
because of the
ShamWow?
ShamWow. But maybe he should have been. I don't know.
Sham, not so wow. It's just a sham. It's not wow.
It's the sham. No, it's sham space wow. Exclamation.
Right, we needed a well-placed comma or something. Yes.
Right. Yes.
Sham. Wow.
Sham? Question mark. Wow.
The no shit headlines. That segment comes later, but we could write it here apparently.
Right. So in other news at Alpine, not the only Alpine move. Nope. Apparently there's Esteban isn't the only move the team are making. So now they're also firing Rob White, who was the longtime operations director, joined back in 2004 or 5, long time ago, then moved to Enstone in 2016. Maybe Alpine's heading towards a real Wrexham revival type thing with Ryan Reynolds and what's the other guy's name? Rob McElhenney, right?
Yeah, I feel like Ryan Reynolds didn't do his homework.
I really wish Ryan and Rob would have called me.
Right, I would have told you. Terrible idea. What are you thinking?
I would have told you the better investment. Yes.
Yeah, and any other team perhaps.
I know. I know.
I don't know what you were thinking.
Rob and I are like this, and he just didn't call, and I don't know why. And I'm not one to kick him when he's down or rub it in. But, he's a delightful guy and wish him all the best.
Who told him this was a good idea?
Well, it wouldn't have been me.
No, but I don't think it would have been anybody involved in Formula One. Like, have you watched? I mean, even if you only watch Drive to Survive and no actual races, I think you'd still be like, maybe not this team. Maybe this isn't where it's at.
But there's a lot of space for a real Wrexham revival here.
Wow,
you could turn it around, Ryan.
It's nowhere but up, I guess.
Nowhere but up. That's right. So they have had these key personnel changes, Matt Harmon and Dirk de Beer leaving, Otmar and Alan Permain, kicked them to the curb, marched them out to the curb. Even CEO Laurent Rossi, he's gone, right?
Yep.
So Bruno Fama just shaking it up over there like a snow globe, for crying out loud. And they seem to be using the old method, Grace, of firing. Just keep firing until everybody starts to scream, and then you fired enough. That's kind of how that works. Right?
I mean, it works great for football teams. Why wouldn't it work great for,
right.
Like, I don't, that's never a good strategy. It's never a good human management, right? Like, we're just going to fire everybody.
I know.
It's not really how you build confidence in your team.
No, it's not. And I don't know what's going on over there, man.
I don't know.
I don't
well,
understand.
I guess maybe they're doing something. They're not just sitting on their laurels. I mean, somebody's
doing something.
They're
doing something.
Fastest carrier.
Yes.
They're at least keeping the HR department busy. I just think this is such a, like, I don't know. Renault, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's you.
I don't know.
If you have to fire everybody and you're still not getting better, it's you.
I know.
Oh no, it all went wrong.
It all went wrong.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know what to tell him. I will say this, Grace.
Mm-hmm.
There's a small part of me that's wondering if things not being so great at Alpine, I'm wondering if Pierre himself isn't having a few quiet conversations with Audi, RB, or even Red Bull.
Oh, I'm sure he is. I'm sure he's never wanted to be there.
If I was Pierre, I was like, ooh, is that the time? Oh.
I think I'm going through a tunnel. This call is getting very fuzzy.
Can't hear you.
We're on a Zoom call, Pierre. Whatever. I
don't know, man.
I mean, I'm for sure. If I was Pierre Gasly, that is not where I'm. No kid. Like we always talk about, like, people are like, I always wanted to be at Ferrari. Said nobody about Renault.
Yeah,
even both French drivers are still like,
Yeah, all drivers have a shelf life. It's like when we get older. There's the child rearing years, right? That you have kids or whatever, and some people do, some people don't. But there's a window.
Yes,
is my point, right?
Correct.
And so, I mean, not necessarily if you're Keith Richards, there may not be a window.
But he's not birthing the children. That's where the window is.
Children. That is where the window is. Yes, you're right. But you got a shelf life and I got to think if Pierre, aspires to more than just trundling around.
Now's the
time. Midfield, now's the time. So gosh, I got to think he's having conversations.
With everybody. With
anybody. Call Roman Grosjean back, I guess. Huh? We need a French driver.
Oh God. Oh sure. I mean, he's an IndyCar. Whatever. Bring him over. It'll be fine.
He's tearing it up over an IndyCar. Literally.
Yeah. Oh, not in a good way. I only watched part of the 500 because it was like rain. First of all, the 500 takes like 7 hours.
It does take a while.
It's
and then you add 4 hours on a rain delay.
Yeah, right. And it was just like, is it on yet? Nope. I still last year's. Is it on yet? Nope. I still last year. So I did watch, and I watched the end because that was.
Yeah, the last third of the race was great.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's just, I don't know. It takes too long.
It is a long race. And Indy makes a meal out of it, man. That whole event spans 30 days over an entire month,
Yeah.
What is this? Well, today is where the drivers, they shake out the cobwebs, plus they get to test all the turkey legs all around the circuit and determine which turkey leg is the best.
Do they still have carburetor day? That was always my favorite.
Carb
those
day,
cars.
yeah.
No, they haven't had carburetor.
As you can see them down there, they've got their Holly 4-barrel and their floats, and they're trying to.
Yeah.
Where's the pin? I can't win. Trying to figure that out.
Just call it something different. It's fine. We get it that you spend the whole month of May in Indy. That's fine.
That's right. No, it's 3 degrees top dead center.
And that's
screwing up.
And it's a lot of St. Elmo's that these people have to eat for a month. But
that ain't all bad. But yes.
I don't know, but it's a lot. Whoever's paying that bill, that's the person that's a lot,
no
right?
That's a lot of steak.
And
St. Elmo's, for those of you who don't know, St. Elmo's is a very famous steakhouse in Indianapolis.
So not only is it a famous place in Indianapolis, but there's like nowhere else to eat in Indianapolis.
I know.
So that
there's a famous hamburger joint. Name totally escapes me now. Mike Weiss will be beating me up. I should know this. I've eaten there, but anyway, that's about it.
Yeah, but I think the thing is that Indianapolis is a mid-sized city.
It's
right?
a toddling town.
But there's like literally nowhere to eat, and I've certainly told this story here before, but y'all have to listen to it again because that's how this works. Is when we were there for the MotoGP race in 06 or whatever. Yeah. There's no place to eat. And so you're just walking around Indianapolis. So now I'm just stalking people on social media because, of course, whatever restaurant they just walked past, I also just walked past because there's only 4 blocks in town. I remember one point that, like, Jorge Lorenzo was like, I'm looking for sushi. Don't eat the sushi. I need you to race on Sunday. Please don't. I don't think you understand where we are. Eat the steak. You're in the Midwest. The steak is going to be excellent. Do you see water? Don't eat the sushi. Please.
That's the weekend, folks. That's the weekend that I drove over because I live in St. Louis, so I'm only, 4 hours away. So I drove over and met Grace over there. Grace had flown in, rented a car, and she was driving around, and I was following her. We were going somewhere to eat.
Fast as possible.
And I was following her, and we pull out of the parking lot, and she just cobs it. She just pours the coals to it. She was running it like she.
It's not my car.
And she was just flying. I was like, damn, So I'm trying to keep up with her, and we're going on these 2-lane roads and a back way in, and she's going like 60, 65 miles an hour. We come up, it's like Gracie's our old school railroad, crossing here in the Midwest. They're not like DC, and she goes over this railroad crossing and launches like Dukes of Hazzard, all 4 wheels off, and boom, and she just keeps going, just flying. And I was like, holy cow, I'm glad I drove, and I'm not riding in that.
I would have driven slower.
Yeah, that was scary.
No, I grew up on these kind of roads. It's fine.
I know you were Western PA, man.
It's fine. We'll be okay. We got it. We got there. But yeah, it was just really funny though. It was. If you wanted to meet riders, that was the way to do it because literally there were several times walking down the street going, wait, that was Nikki Hayden. Wait, what just happened here? Right? Like, do I turn around and follow him? What happened here? Because again, as just a fan, you're not like used to mingling with the fame, right? And you're just like, oh, well, that was, anywhere you went, you saw somebody because there are only 4 places to eat. But anyway, you could go to any other mid-sized town in like Ohio or, Nebraska, and you're never like, where am I going to eat? But for some reason in Indianapolis, there are only one place to eat. There's only St. Elmo's. And
it's kind of like awesome when I was down there. I've been down there several times. I was down there and I was we were walking across the street and there was Jensen Button and his wife walking right towards me.
Oh my God.
Crosswalk, right?
Yeah.
And I walked up and I'm looking at him and he starts looking at me like, how are you? And literally, he looked at me like I was like some freak of nature, like you're
Jensen Button.
you know, like I was slithering across the crosswalk, and he was looking at me, and I was like, God, I'm not like a freak of nature, you know, I'm quite a bit taller than you are, but whatever. And so I was walking towards him, and he's holding his wife's hand, and he's looking at me, and I go, hey, JB, how are you? And he just looked at me and hurried by, and I thought, what the hell? And it wasn't like I was dressed like a hobo or a bum.
But you were there
I wasn't busking.
But you were there on the race weekend, right?
Yeah, I was there on the race weekend. So I'm blaming Jessica Mitchell-Bottom, and that's why they got a divorce. He chose wisely there. See, I'm going to blame her.
I just think that, you know, it would be one thing, like he lives in LA. Like if I was in LA and I saw Jensen Button and I was like, yo, hey, Jensen Button, what's up? I get it. It's weird. People in LA probably don't recognize him. But if you're in Austin on a race weekend, people know who you are. People are going to actually be like, oh, JB, how's it going,
JB.
right?
Yeah.
And you aren't like me who would have like, I was like, do I turn around? Like, because by the time like my brain would figure out like that person looks familiar. Oh, crap, right? Like, do I circle back around? Is that creepy? Or like, and then all day I will just like fester over this idea of like, should I have said something? Should I have turned around? Did I sound like like, did I sound like an idiot? Like, what happened here? I don't.
Jensen,
I
I'm a creature from the Black Lagoon.
I just feel like in that situation, and the whole time you're just like, they're just people. They're just people. They're just people. Just trying to talk yourself off that ledge of fandom of they're just people.
Same thing in LA. I was walking through the airport, and Jack Black goes walking by me, right? And he looks at me, he squints his eyes, and I just kept going. And I walk right by him. I go, hey, Jack, how are you? And I walked by, and when I got to the door, I turned around, and he kind of turned around and started to head back. Like he wasn't sure if he should know me, you know? And he started sort of turn around like maybe he knew me or whatever. I'm glad he didn't because, you know, then I'd look like an idiot. I'm glad he just finally kept going. Anyway.
That story would have had, like, he would have been like, oh, hey, do I know you? How do I know you? The yarn you would have had to create.
No, I would do that. Yeah, you don't remember at the party?
Right? Exactly. With that famous guy, what's his name?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, in the hills? Yeah, it was a good time.
Good time.
Yeah, just kept that going. But I think, although I will also, one more story. When we were in Austin for the MotoGP race in April, Alex Rins was in the airport the same time I was.
I saw your picture of him.
Yeah, we were just sitting there, and first of all, I always think it's funny because men, in my experience, are often like, oh, women, you do this and you do this and you're all the time, all these. Have you never met men around a sports star? Like, I don't know why you're like, oh, women are always like, oh, look at that guy over there. I'm like, you guys are just as bad. The swarm of like people that were all these guys all of a sudden were like, Alex Rins. I'm like, he's a nice guy. We took a picture with him. You know, we saw an interview with him. Nice guy. But it was just really funny that it was just like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it from guys with the like, women are like, chit all the time because you're just as bad.
Yeah.
You're just as bad. So it's fine.
Yeah,
we all have our fandom.
I don't fanboy like that. It's just kind of the way I'm wired. It's not that I don't respect him. Of course I do.
It's just kind of weird. It is a weird thing because you're kind of like, there's a part of you that is just, again, it's both like they're just people, and then you're just like, and then I always think it's weird too because of course I know too much. Like if I just met you on the street, I don't know much about you, but I know a lot about Jensen Button.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of weird, right? Like, why do I know this much about you? Oh, right, because, Anyway,
and I'm sure all the drivers get that, you know, at some level. I mean, you know, when I was in the paddock, you know, briefly I've talked to Seb on a few occasions, Felipe Massa. I briefly talked to Lewis, very briefly talked to Michael Schumacher. But you know, they're busy, and you're not going to get into the whole fanboy thing. And you know, I could have easily asked for autographs. I'm just not that kind of guy. You know, meeting them, and saying hi, and everything is fine. It's good for me. So anyway, what other F1 news? Hey, you've heard of Peaky Blinders. Now we're going to talk about Peaky Tires. Peaky Tires, and all you Lewis Hamilton fans will know exactly what I'm talking about.
What could be more exciting than tires?
Tire Talk. It doesn't get any better than this. The reason is, and this is a hat tip to Autosport, because they had this article, and I thought it was actually a really interesting article when I unpacked it. So let me go through this. So Lewis found time amongst his eating super hot sauce chicken wings. Did you see that episode?
Of course I did.
Yeah, that was a great episode. He's a trooper, man. He ate every one of those multiple bites. I mean, that guy's got spice. He's fine with spice, man.
Well, or he's just okay with as they were discussing like the second revisit, right? Like I think that to me is the well, maybe this is okay now. Later.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Of course, I'm not good with spicy, but anyway, that was good. So he found time to comment on Pirelli's tires after the Miami Grand Prix, saying, quote, "Honestly, it's probably the most frustrating thing. You look back in the day when you had a much bigger working window to work with. Then you can just optimize the balance and then just have good grip throughout the whole lap. This is definitely my least favorite." He's talking about how narrow the peak grip level window for the current Pirelli compounds are this season. And he was saying it's really frustrating because it's so narrow that he was finding it difficult to get into that peak grip level of the window. Now, you know as well as I do that Pirelli get very touchy when drivers criticize their tires, and it's an interesting point about the relationship that they have with F1 teams and drivers, if I'm honest. Because in the past, drivers have been somewhat careful about denigrating the tire supplier, and especially now, as they all know that they're designed to wear out and degrade artificially from what they would otherwise make, which is a terrific long-lasting race tire. If Pirelli was asked to do that, that's what they'd do. So you got to be careful. You can't come and say, "Oh, these tires, they're wear out and they're crap." You can't say that because that's what they're supposed to be, right? But this, getting a little chippy there, a little spicy from Lewis Hamilton. And I recall even many years ago, when there was the Bridgestone, Goodyear, Michelin sort of battle, the Michelin and Goodyear battle or whatever it was. I remember back then, Goodyear was struggling mightily with Ferrari and with their grip. I mean, they just weren't developing tires on par with their competitors. And finally, Schumacher had enough. And I recall many years ago when he finally had enough of their dodgy tires and he caved and was very critical of them. And this prompted the head of Goodyear Europe to lash back out, and Michael said, "That's just unacceptable. Who does he think he is, God?" And I said at the time, as far as Goodyear is concerned, he's about as close as it gets. Yes, he is. Yes. Yeah. So, and then they ditched, and Goodyear's never been back to Formula One ever since then. So Lewis said it about Pirelli, and so Pirelli have responded, and here's what they said. They said, "Every tire has a peak at some point, and the operating window is always just a definition. We take a certain percentage of grip loss to define the window. I think even in the past it was the same, but probably it was less critical because the level of detail that we have at the moment is quite significant. That's why now everything is highlighted and important. In the past, 15 to 20 years ago, you had cars or drivers even divided by half a second or 7/10 of a second, so it wasn't as narrow. But the fight now is completely different, and even 1/10 or a second makes a great difference." And their point here is what Pirelli's saying, Simone Barra is saying for Pirelli, is that the competition is so tight amongst current Formula One, even in the midfield, that window margin of peak performance across that margin is enough to put you in the clutches of a car behind you because the competition is so close. So they're saying that it may be more noticeable now because the competition is closer, not because the tires are more difficult to get into the peak window. Because Lewis, and you should know that as a seasoned veteran. Right. So that's what it's saying. So, look, I'm not saying that's the right answer. I'm not saying that because Pirelli have had a history where they try to get a little too cute with the engineering. And that has happened in the past. Think of British Grand Prix with the 3 tires blowing up. So that I don't know. It could make sense. I would say that you could ask, Grace, okay, well, maybe does Mercedes have any culpability in this? Is it something they're doing with their chassis to make it peaky? Simon Barra said that could be. He said, we know very well that especially the C4, and in some cases, obviously the high temperature, the C5, there can be peaky performance. Some teams are less able compared to others to extract the peak of performance. Part of this is the tire. Yes, honestly it is. But part of it is as well the car, the suspension, and how the car is exploiting the compound performance. So it's both factors, end quote. So I got to reading a little bit more of this article, and I found it very interesting. Because this is all Simone Barrett and at Pirelli. And then Mario Isola chimed in on this and even had a chart that they shared in the article.
I love it. Mario Isola brings a chart.
He's got a chart. It's not a pie chart. It's a real chart with like something shaped as a bell curve. So for those that are listeners only and not viewers, think of a bell curve, right? Starts low, goes up to a peak, and then comes back down low. But at that peak, think of it not just perfectly rounded and back down. Think of it going up to that peak and then sort of plateauing off a little bit as much as possible and then coming back down. That's what the chart looked like. So what Mario said about that was let me find this. So out of the total grip and heat levels, there's about 3% area of peak grip, according to Mario. And they try to flatten that peak out across the entirety of that 3% to make it as wide as possible, right? So think of that chart going up on one side, peaking, and then coming down on the other side. Up the very top, between both sides going up, there's a 3% gap there, and they want to try to flatten that 3% out as much as possible. All of that effort to try and find a 3% window of peak grip, you can understand now the frustration the engineers must have trying to get their cars in that incredibly sweet spot of only 3% between the heat cycle and fall off on grip. Right? And they've got to keep that car there in that little 3%. And Pirelli's tried to level that 3% off a little bit to make it wider window. But they're saying it's so small that if I'm only 0.3 ahead of my competitor, it's not enough, right?
Right.
Because you could be not at peak performance, but off a degree or two.
And that's it.
And that's it. Yeah. So I just found it really interesting in the way that they described it.
Well, I mean, how long has Pirelli been the tire supplier for?
Yeah.
So I think they've had to figure out how to explain that, because there's a reason that nobody else wanted to do it, or because you want a brand that's big enough, that's worthy of Formula One, right? Pinky out kind of thing, and yet is willing to live with this, right? Because of course this is going to affect what you think of their street tires. Pirelli's, I'm not going to buy those pieces
Things
of
are
crap.
falling apart in Formula One.
I don't want that, right? Because so I think that there's you had to find that middle of the pack kind of tire that was willing to be that fall guy. But they've been that fall guy for so long now that of course they're good at explaining well, it's not always our fault. First of all, they have to explain, I'm doing what I'm told, right? I'm contracted. These are the specifications I'm following. This is what Formula One's asked us to do. That's what we're producing. This isn't what we produce with all our tires. This is just what we do for this series, right? And because Pirelli offers tires for lots of other racing series and for road cars. And then they also have to be good at explaining why when Lewis Hamilton or anybody says it's the tires, here are all the 700 other factors besides just us. Right? And that you could put somebody else's tires on it and you may or may not still have these same problems. So it's not just us. We're just the convenient scapegoat, but it's not always just us.
Right. Yeah, when you're struggling to get in the window, I get it now. It's a very narrow window. Let's see. Red Bull's curb issues. You know, when we think about Red Bull, the big lesson that we learned, what did we learn from Red Bull, Monica? Well, many suggest that we learned that they can't take a curb worth a damn. Ultimately, the team suggested that it's the dastardly correlation issue, Grace, between the virtual car setup and the actual car design. It's that correlation. Again, it's always that correlation.
Oh.
I would think that if you've been doing this long enough, that if correlation keeps cropping up as your problem, maybe the whole sim thing isn't
Maybe you have a
something you
problem.
want to hang your hat on. You know, maybe we should get back to testing instead of spending tens of millions of dollars in sim work. And then again, maybe not. Ultimately, the team suggested it was correlation. The issue is that they say that the sim says a particular setup should work great on the curbs, but in real life they don't. So this question is now being raised in regards to Canada this weekend, as it's a track with some serious chicane curb attacking, and some wonder if this won't be presenting the same issues to Red Bull this weekend. Now, having said that, the track has been resurfaced at Canada.
Like real resurfaced or like China resurfaced?
I think it's a real resurface.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Just checking.
Instead of the painting it,
They just didn't paint
black,
it.
They won't know.
Right.
They'll never know. They're going to know. No, they won't know. They're going to know. No, they won't. Yes, just painting the tarmac black and saying
Right.
it's resurfaced. No, I think this is an actual resurface. So you never know what kind of grip levels we're going to get.
Yeah,
out
that's
of
right.
it. And if the grip levels will have an impact on how much curb they take, I don't know. We'll have to see. My hunch is, this is my personal, non-educated, non-engineering hunch. My hunch is that Red Bull's aero, their aero advantage is very specific to the height of the car, to the ground, and the suspension is very stiff in order to control that ride height to make the most out of their aero. And when you loosen that up so you can go over curbs, it tends to hop, break that aero advantage, and the car is difficult over the curbs. So that's my layman's explanation.
That's very solid, though.
Okay.
I think that's a very...
What
my layman agreement with your statement.
Perfect. We have a quorum.
There you go.
Also, I think when we focus 100% on Red Bull, and why did they lose pace? And they're the curbs, and they're the hopping, and are they going to have the issue in Canada? And what's going to know? They're going to come back. I think in a lot of ways we also might be doing disservice to McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes for clawing back performance in their development cycles and chipping away at Red Bull's dominance. I don't know.
Which Red Bull also, they can't say that. Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can't put in your press release if you're Red Bull, like, well, McLaren's just getting better.
Everybody caught up with us.
Yeah, right? So you have to have
Yeah.
some reason, even if the, percentage of that I mean, because I'm sure this is a valid reason why they're having problems, but they sell it as if this is the majority of the reason. It may not be, right? And so, but you have to put something out there. You can't just be like, well, Ferrari, that Fred, he's doing something right.
Yeah.
I don't know, like Rodney Dangerfield is writing your, press releases or something. So,
Right.
Well, get no respect around here. But I think that it is an issue for them, but I agree. I don't think it's quite as big of an issue as they're trying to make it to be. Long story short there.
Yes. There you go. Watch this space. Hey.
Yeah, we'll see next Monday how right or wrong you were. Because I'm sure Paul will be the first one to be like, that's not what you said last week, Todd.
Yeah. They say, ho, ho, ho. They were all over the place. What an idiot. Why do you listen to that podcast? Turn it off.
Why didn't anybody ask me to vote? You let those two yokels vote on what Red Bull's problem is. What do they know?
Guy's a joke. So now comes the F1 property portion of the news.
All right.
For those of you into MotoGP, attaboy.
As you should be.
As you should be. For those of you just getting into MotoGP, way to go. Or maybe you're just MotoGP curious.
I will welcome you.
That's fine. The big news this week. Huge news. Does anybody have anything for Marc Marquez? Marc Marquez is joining the factory Ducati team next year And
Right.
if that wasn't big enough news, Jorge Martin is joining Aprilia next season.
Yeah. So this has been a whole thing. So
I'm surprised.
I'm surprised.
I thought Ducati would go for Jorge.
I mean, why wouldn't you? What kind of an
Young
idiot
gun,
would you be?
leading
So
the championship.
that's the part that doesn't make any sense to me. Is that so? First of all, Ducati has not put out an official statement yet, which I find so. Anyway, there's a force. They were supposed to have a race, and it was canceled. Well, it was moved to the end of the season, and I can't remember anyway. But anyway, they moved the race. So we have a 3-week break that we weren't supposed to have. So, it's interesting because, of course, this breaking now we have nothing but Turkmenistan is where the race was supposed to be. But anyway, so now we have nothing but to ponder, stew in our own
Right.
thoughts for 3 weeks because we're not going to hear from anybody because we're on this spring break here all of a sudden or something. Right?
Sit in our own mess and think about what we've done.
Yeah, and so the Marc Marquez news came up, but what I don't understand, I was trying to put this in what is Formula One terms, right? If you're let's say you're Fred Vasseur, right? And you're about to sign Lewis Hamilton, and you know you're going to sign Lewis Hamilton. You might, I'm just saying, want to have a conversation with Charles Leclerc about how he feels about this.
Yeah.
Right? So to me, there feels like there's a missing conversation here that I don't understand because I think if you are the number one team and you have one seat that you are trying to figure out who's going to be next year world champion, whether you're going to keep Bastianini or you're going to put in Martin, who you should have put in already, but you didn't, or Marc Marquez, who out of nowhere now is signed with Ducati, I don't understand how you don't have a conversation with Marquez and don't have a conversation with Martin and then you make an announcement. It seems like Marc Marquez, they were all going to sign, Ducati was all hep to sign Jorge Martin, and Marc Marquez strong-armed them into it, which he can do.
Yeah, it could.
But it just seems like...
Do you think Jorge went for the money at Aprilia, and Ducati knew that, so they jumped out ahead of the announcement before, so they didn't look like they had egg on their face not getting Jorge?
No, I guess I see it as they were going to sign Jorge Martin. They said, hey, we're going to sign you. And then Marc Marquez said, that is not okay with me. And so then Jorge Martin was like, oh, you're not going to sign me? Fine. So Alicia Spargo, Catalunya, 2 races ago, I feel I haven't been on the show in 6 weeks. I'm like, what? So many races have passed in both of these series. But anyway, he retired. He announced his retirement. Jorge Martin and him are close, and I knew that. But Martin was emotional and tears, and he was in the family photo. They're tight. So I get it that it would be if you replaced me on the podcast and I found out, so I called some other podcast and was like, hey, you got a seat for me? Okay, great. I'm going to go be on their show now. I don't think Jorge went first. I think that Marc Marquez strong-armed his way with Ducati, and then Jorge Martin was like, I guess I'll go to Aprilia. But we don't know yet because, again, Ducati hasn't officially said anything, which I also think is very weird. But
this would be kind of like Ferrari having a shot at getting Max.
Yes, and getting rid of to replace.
But not signing Max, but taking Lewis.
Yeah,
instead of Max.
Yeah, it's all just.
It's not like Lewis is a bad driver. He's not. He's a 7-time champion.
Either way, you're
Marquez
a winner.
is 7, 8, 9-time world champ.
8.
8, yeah. So it's not like they got a deadbeat. And what I'd say he's doing in that Gresini this year is nothing short of amazing. Right?
Yeah, we texted that on Sunday that I said that to you. That could you imagine if this had happened a year ago?
Right.
Marquez was injured, so it's not we've lost all of these years when he was at Honda. But what we could have gained a year. He just seemed someone. When we saw an interview with him at Austin, it was just somebody said, I don't have a question. I'm just glad to see you happy. Yeah, right. You know what I mean? At some point, I'm not the biggest Marc Marquez fan in a sense, but it's just you just want to see him be successful. I'm trying to think. It would be Alonso or somebody. Maybe you're not an Alonso fan, but you want to see him be successful. You don't want him tottering around at McLaren, right? That's not what anybody wants for Alonso.
That's what he's doing now.
Right, you want to see him to be competitive. You want to see him happy. You want to see him enjoying the series. So, I don't know.
Yeah, it's big news.
So MotoGP is sort of like nuts right now, and everybody but Franco Morbidelli has there's only like everybody's contract went up at the same time except for Frankie's, and so it was just like there's like 20 open seats right now.
Yeah.
Like, cause like Fabio signed and Bagnaia signed, and that's
the Beast is looking for a ride.
He could be anywhere. It's just like and you
Bender.
know. Yeah, well.
200. Brad Bender, 227 miles an hour down the straight at Mugello on Sunday.
Right,
amazing.
But Pedro Acosta is like handing both him and Jack Miller. They're like.
Yeah, I know.
Heads in a handbasket, right? Like he's a rookie on gas. So that was the big thing, was that like, because MotoGP, right, just like Formula One has, the front teams and the back teams. And, when Marc Marquez joined with Honda, Repsol Honda, he was a top rider at a top team and just was like successful right out of the gate.
Yep.
Now we have Pedro Acosta, who is a top rider, but not at a top team.
Right.
And he's just always finishing in the top 5.
Yeah.
And even at that, he's like unflappable. Like if he makes a mistake, he's like, oh yeah, I pushed the bike too hard. We'll fix it for tomorrow. And he fixes it. It's like, you see that on, we always talk about like Hell's Kitchen or Top Chef or like that. You see the person that like, Gordon Ramsay says, you did that and that was wrong. And then you see next week they fixed it. You see that person that like really was able to take that feedback and, make a better meal out of it. And that's sort of what Acosta's able to do. And so, there's no way that Brad Binder, for as talented as he is like, you're out of there, buddy. So that's why I was like, maybe there's that like brief moment when we didn't know what Jorge Martin was going to do. I'm like, maybe KTM, this would be great. Martin and Acosta, that would be the dream. But Aprilia, him, and I guess they haven't signed Maverick yet, but that seems like where they're. I haven't heard Aprilia signing anybody else but Maverick, but I don't know. We picked up my new Jorge Martin signed autograph while we were in Austin.
Nice.
So, since he had won the race the week before in Estoril, so I had to do a little reorganizing back here, but. We had to move Senna down a little bit, and then I got the new Monaco posted. So.
I like it.
Yeah, so we did a little rearranging.
Signed. I don't have this signed by Schumacher.
Yeah. Well,
I don't have this one signed by here. I wish I could have got Jim Clark. Sign that.
Well, I mean, it's not like I got it signed, right? We paid for the autograph people to sign it and then send it to us. I did not carry this around with me all weekend.
Oh, Grace, over here. Grace, come here. Let me sign some stuff for you.
First of all, my goal was to get Pedro Acosta to sign my Vote for Pedro shirt because I do firmly believe in the I once heard that with eBay, there's no point in getting collectibles anymore. Like eBay's like kind of ruined the collectibles market because now you can get anything. So you should only get things that you want. Right? Like, so don't get the Jorge Martin because you think, oh, it will be worth money someday, because it's really not. Your enjoyment of it is the value.
Yeah, right.
Man, how cool would a Vote for Pedro signed by Pedro Acosta hanging up on my back wall? That would be so cool. So, but
I didn't know that about eBay. I was going to go on there. I'm going to go on there and buy a used Paul Charsley. So
there you go. And so, but I think the key is you need children. That was. We got there, because we were in the, they have it's like a U shape, the little pen where they, bring the riders around and they interview them and they sign stuff. And I was just like, we're standing between too many children. I was like, can I borrow that? Do you think I could borrow somebody's child? Can I borrow your child? Because who's going to argue with that? The kid's cute. It's going to make his day that Marc Marquez said hi to him,
That's because MotoGP riders love children.
I do. I mean, but they're cute. What are you going to do?
Did you see Pecco? He got off, got his guitar out, and then he threw a glove in the crowd, and then he saw a little kid right by the fence, and he walked the glove over to him. It was great. I love it.
Yeah, you gotta love the kids.
Yeah,
That's
you
the
gotta
future.
love kids.
So I just watch this space. Like if you love silly season, MotoGP will not. There are so many ways it will not disappoint this season, but for sure it's not gonna disappoint because we still got 7 more pegs. Like in Formula One, we're just waiting for Carlos close science to figure something out.
Yeah.
MotoGP, we're still waiting for like 6 riders to figure something out before
there's
we
a
really
lot.
have a settled market.
A lot of silly season. All right, let's do some Albin's Cat, shall we? What do we have? I have some no-shit headlines. What do you have?
All right. So first, I mean, like I said, I haven't been on the show in like 6 weeks, so I don't want to go by without mentioning both the upswing of both McLaren and Ferrari. Like, I get it. Monaco, not the most exciting race, but I'm not a Ferrari fan, but who doesn't love some Charles Leclerc winning a race? It was great. I was like, look at that. And we didn't have to worry about if the band at Monaco knew the song or not, which I always think, like, what if some, like, big something happens and, you know, like Pastor Maldonado wins and like, oh, I don't know. We didn't practice that one. You know, like.
That's strange. I wonder what's causing all the accidents.
Oh, that's good.
So I think that, you know, at least they knew the song and that the Prince got right in there. Like, because usually they kind of do things out of order in Monaco so that the dignitaries can get off the stage. And it was like, nobody's going anywhere. Prince Albert's like, no, I'm in this, man.
There with the champagne. It was awesome.
I was going to say it was great, and I was going to say it was similar to, so MotoGP just had its race in Mugello, and so, you know, it's Pecco Bagnaia won, who's Italian, and Nio Bastianini came in second as Italian, and then Jorge Martin, who's Spanish, and so all the, like, dignitaries passing at the awards, right, are Italian, so they're like, oh, yeah, Spanish guy, nice. Oh, Italian guy, you know, oh, Italian guy. It was very clear who they were there for. And so it was kind of, you saw the same thing with Prince Albert, that he was just like, oh, these are my people. A Monegasque won. My entire life has been made. So I did enjoy that kind of excitement. And then McLaren winning in Miami was, of course, I was like, even though it's Formula One and, you know, we're the last 10 laps, do we really expect something to change? No. But it was just like, don't talk to me. I just can't. I either need to pace or just sit here still or do something, because what are the chances that this could just go all terribly wrong because it's McLaren? And, you know, that's kind of how that works. So I was very glad that both our teams have done well.
Yes.
And I will say, too, that in Miami, you know, so I'm on, you know, like afterwards, I'm on social media. I'm like, oh, this is great. What are other people saying? And then I come across Tony Kanaan, who says this sweet message about, you know, this is dedicated to Jill DeFerrin. And now I'm like, oh, my God. Like all the emotion. I'm like, I was okay, Tony B. I'm like, you're right. Oh, my God, Jill DeFerrin. And it was a lot. It was a lot of epicness in my own living room because, of course, if I'd like gone into the streets shouting, my neighbors would have called the police or something. Like, there's a crazy woman in her pajamas running up and down the, no, not my pajamas, because it was in our time. So that would have been like 4 p.m. That would have been weird, but, you know.
But
so
possible.
Anyway, it is possible, but, you know, it was a moment, and then, right, Tony Kanaan just adding on top of it, and then, of course, the team also, you know, put on their board dedicating it to Jill, and it was just like, you guys are the best. So it was great. And I think we all enjoy a little randomness, right?
Yes.
It is nice that it isn't just, you know, it's like the Verhambot days. It's nice that it's a little more mixed up, and, you know, and I'm okay with it being what, you know, Vernor Claire. I don't know what that would be, with some signs in there or something. Like, it's kind of fun. It's kind of nice to see what's going to happen, and I'll take it. So I just want to. And
you saw, you know, then there was that, and then Zach went to Indy 500, not Monaco, and then he was in St. Louis.
Oh, that's right.
He was right. I don't know why you didn't call me. I would have bought him some T-Raps.
For sure, right?
His favorite team is St. Louis Cardinals, so he was down throwing out the first pitch there. And so,
yeah, I when you had said that on the group chat, I was just like, "Whoa!" I would make me nervous. Like, I never want to be the person that messes up the first. Like, I'd have to practice. I'd have to stand real
like
close.
20 feet short of the catcher.
Yeah. And of course, the catchers always play really nice, right? Like, that's part of the job. They're like, "You did great. You did great." It like landed 7 inches away from you. I am embarrassed to ever show my face here again.
That you're gonna throw the heat in there and just didn't.
And
in the dirt.
Yeah, and so and I also, I mean, I think this is the real reason I haven't been on the show in like 6 weeks, because all of a sudden Minardi is crushing the F1 Fantasy League over here. So just watch this space, people. I'm telling you, the Minarbis were coming for you. We're mostly coming for Charsley. That's always the goal.
Oh man, I'm
Always.
sinking like a stone. I kept buying into the whole Ferrari, the dream in the beginning of the
Can't do
season.
that.
It was terrible. It's just horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible, this idea.
So we're just a 2-man team against Charsley yet again,
That's
as
it.
always.
You and I need to join up and go after Charsley.
Yeah. And then inevitably I look at his picks like after, you look at your points and you can look at like, well, what did other people pick? And you're like, oh, Charsley. Like, talk about Delphi Oracle. That guy knows stuff.
I know.
He's from the future.
Although I did beat him last year.
See? Well, and we beat him. We were a team that beat Paul just in case. It was alphabetical. So
Yeah, it's good.
It's the goal.
Let's do some notion headlines. First one up. You'll like this one. F1 photographer hurt in Sergio Perez accident speaks out and gives injury update. I had no idea that there was a photographer injured, so that's horrible. And I wish you a speedy and safe recovery from all of us here at TPF. I'm so sorry that you got hurt in that. That's always a bummer deal. We rely on the photographers to bring us the images of these races, and they go and it's the travel and everything and trying to get in and all the stuff that they go through to shoot an event like that. No one expects you to go there and walk away injured.
Right.
So I'm so sorry that happened. So get better soon, and shout out to you. The first headline: Ryan Reynolds' F1 team rocked by 7 disasters after staff quit and driver got attacked. What is that headline? Well, first of all, so it's Ryan Reynolds' team now. It's just his team. It's
right.
a minority shareholder, but it's his team, right?
So the phrase was consciously uncoupling. I was close. It was coming to me.
Consciously uncoupling. That is
So
good.
maybe Ryan Reynolds should consciously uncouple himself from the team.
You're going to need the money for Wrexham if you're trying to get to Premier League, man.
I don't know. I just think this,
all
but
I'm
this
saying.
isn't where you're going to get it.
No.
This is not the investment you should have made. But
No.
yeah, not
You
so
should
good.
be like an Ocon and just leave.
Yeah.
So there you go. Jeremy Clarkson snubbed Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher to name favorite F1 star. I don't think he snubbed Lewis or Michael.
Who
He
did
did
he
nothing
name?
of the sort. He didn't mention him. He wasn't asked about him. He didn't call him and say, I'm snubbing you. He didn't get an invite from them and not show up. Nothing. They asked him who his favorite driver was, and he says Gilles Villeneuve. That's all.
That's a laudable. It's not like he said Jacques Villeneuve. Like that would be a snub,
Yeah,
right?
that would be a real snub. He likes
know.
Gilles Villeneuve, and
You
what's not
can't
to
really
like?
fault him for that.
No,
I mean,
you
I
can't.
I fault Jeremy Clarkson for a lot of things, but that's one I can't fault him for.
No,
So
of course not. And finally, F1 star Lewis Hamilton reveals he peed himself mid-race during Singapore Grand Prix.
that was the only time he said. So it was during the hot wings, right? That he said that.
So you went a mile for that headline, didn't you? You went a mile. You watched another show called Hot Wings that wasn't even yours. You listened to the answers. He mentioned he peed himself, and then you wrote an article about it. Okay.
Yeah. Although I will tell you, so I don't know if you watch Hot Wings. I've or Hot Ones. Sorry.
That's the first episode I've ever
Okay,
watched.
so they're fun. They're a fun jaunt into the world, and so but inevitably it becomes a black hole because you're like, oh, this person, so you should watch Gordon Ramsay. Gordon Ramsay's been on a couple times. He's excellent every time because he's full on Gordon Ramsay, and the whole time he's just cussing and is like talking about the day after the hot wings, and it's great. So watch Gordon Ramsay. You would enjoy them. Conan O'Brien recently did one that got a lot of hits, if you will. We randomly, after we watched Lewis Hamilton, watched the one with Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers, the bassist. Fascinating. I don't know why. It was just sort of like, oh, Flea, I wonder what's up there. It was very insightful. So not what I expected from a Hot Ones. But if you're going to go down that rabbit hole, those would be my recommendations. Watch the Gordon Ramsay. He's been on a couple times. Always great. And Flea. It was pretty
They
good.
should have Paul on there because Monday Paul flies to Le Mans, folks.
That's right.
It's that time. It's that time.
Get ready.
Guess
people.
who's racing at the 24 Hours of Le Mans? Paul Charsley's Heart of Racing. Yeah. It's happening. It's all going down. It always rains at Le
It's
Mans.
happening.
Yes. All right. Well, that does it for this episode. So, we think about the news this week, but you tell us what you think about the news, and you can do that by going to theparkformay.com and sharing your opinion. Just do it with decorum and civility, as always. If you like this podcast, go over to your favorite podcast player and give us a good rating, give us some love, show us some love over there. And if you really like this podcast, you can always go to our website. Down at the bottom, it says support us. You can click on that. You can become a Patreon supporter, like Melton, like Fabio, like Ian, like Dave.
If you've made it to this far in the show, who are you not like? It's an hour and a half. We're like an hour and a half into your life right now. What are you
could
not
be like
liking
Frank
it?
here. Frank's with us live. Fabio, Melton, they're all here.
That's
You
right.
could join us live. So if you would like to do that, you can go over to our website and support us at Patreon. Be much, much appreciated, because we would not do this podcast without it and without you. So that does it for this podcast, but I'll be back next week to talk about the Canadian Grand Prix. Of course, here's to a Lance Stroll victory.
Oh, Lancey.
Lance, yes, I
He's
know.
so-
I want it now! What's the matter with those twats down there?
So the new F1 game dropped, video game dropped, and as part of it,
I read it was is a different category.
you can, so of course Flip bought it and he's been playing it, but you pick a driver and a team that you support. Like, so if you're successful, they're successful. Nobody likes Lance Stroll, is what I've learned. Nico Hulkenberg is currently the highest rated driver by the fans.
Everybody
I was
likes
like,
the Hulk.
I get that. Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, Hulkenberg, I can see that. But Lance,
Not so much.
nobody's liking the Lance, so just replace him.
There you
I
go.
2mean, even with Ocon, that might be okay.
It might be.
But oh, not with Alonso still there. No, that would be terrible. Don't do that. Well, after Alonso leaves, maybe
Yeah,
into
maybe.
the team.
Maybe. All right. Well, I'll be back next week. We'll do it all over again. Review the Canadian Grand Prix. Until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camera, saying so long, Grace.
See you in a couple weeks.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.